This video is brought to you by ncix.com. Great technology, selection, and service. After a very long week, I was about to start my third ITX build for this week, and I was really excited to see how the new Core 500 from Fractal design would stack up with my usual reference system. And then I asked, what makes a good ITX enclosure? It's definitely a combination of things like hardware support, how many drives can you mount, and would it support your beefy GPU? But what about a power supply and any overkill all-in-one coolers that you might want to mount just because you can? And what about cable management, or is the assembly process a total pain, or will you preserve some nerves? And so due to space limitations, I thought at least one of these factors must fall short in the new Core 500. And so I began my journey hoping for a good outcome to see if this is the best ITX enclosure yet. At $60, the core of the Core 500 is extremely well built, solid steel joints, no flex anywhere, and the only plastic piece is the front panel with that staple brushed aluminum quote-unquote look. There's a single 5¼ drive bay at the top with dual USB 3 audio jacks and PR buttons, ventilation all around, small one for the power supply, venting strips spanning the entire panel near the GPU, and also the top panel that are both covered with this magnetic dust filter, which is awesome. Plus a removable filter underneath the power supply is available. The only minor annoyance is reinstalling that exterior panel, which is more difficult than it should be, as you need to align all the clips on all the sides for the panel to fit in place properly. Behind the front panel we find no intake ports, instead a single SSD mount that, if installed facing up, interferes with the 5¼ drive bay but is easier to route with the SATA cables, but the cutout on the bottom left would allow appropriate routing for those SATA cables if the SSD is facing down. At the back it's a standard ITX setup, motherboard I/O and dual PCI brackets. A power extension plug is on the left side that you have to plug into the power supply internally, and a 140mm exhaust fan is included. The idea for this ITX build was to utilize the 240mm radiator for the CPU that will also act as exhaust, and that's the impressive design choice here, as the fan bracket at the top, that is totally removable by the way, allows dual 140 or 120mm fans and their respective radiator sizes, which suit this form factor really well. And here's what the inside looks like without the GPU, and I say that an all-in-one suits an ITX enclosure well because of cable management. Everything has to be concentrated to the side of the motherboard, and handling any cables with a low-profile CPU pump would be easier than having to work around a tower CPU cooler, which it does support by the way up to 170mm in height. The Core 500 supports full-size ATX power supply that is installed at the front of the motherboard, with recommendations of 160mm in length or shorter for modular units, as that would mean no interference with the GPU. There are cable tie hoops on this side of the case if you'd want to secure some cables underneath the graphics card, with maximum supported GPUs up to 310mm in length or just over 12 inches, which means you can easily build a sweet ITX gaming system without sacrificing on cooling nor hardware compatibility. For storage, the main drive bracket can support dual 3.5 and 2.5 drives at the same time. The SSDs are installed on the outside and the hard disks on the other side of the bracket, with appropriate cutouts available to get in with your screwdriver, plus non-restrictive mounting positions for either drive, which I appreciate greatly. You can unmount either drive without affecting the placement of the other. The only challenging thing here I could see, if all 4 drives are installed, is managing all those SATA cables in this tiny cutout in the center. You'd need 90° SATA cables for sure in order to fit everything. Now, on the topic of challenging, notice all these cables coming from the top I/O, which are a pain to hide. They would be very difficult to work with if an optical drive was installed, as they are right above there. And I like having top I/O that are easy to reach on the exterior, but in certain internal configurations, these cables are frustrating to work with. And finally, installing the 5¼ drive bracket back inside the case, I'm happy to see no clearance issues with our H105 radiator and a set of fans, plus a third mechanical drive can be installed right underneath for that additional storage, bringing total drive capacity to 3 SSDs and 3 3.5-inch drives. So the Core 500 at its core offers a fantastic foundation for enthusiast ITX systems. Cable management will always be challenging in confined spaces, and you just have to accept that. And I feel this case is a good balance of making sure hardware compatibility is maximized and you have a great cooling options, plus storage is well incorporated. Although I wish that the drive bracket was completely removable outside of the case to make installation and removal of drives easier when the system is fully assembled. But in general, I enjoyed working with the Core 500. There were no deal-breaking surprises along the way, and we're giving it HardwareCanucks damn good award. So this is it for the Core 500 review. Let us know if you've been enticed to do an ITX build of your own with a comment below. I'm Dimitri with HardwareCanucks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.